Hey everyone, it's Professor John McKinney here. I'm in Santiago, Chile. I hope you enjoyed what you've read this week. We have a great video coming up talking about culture. So yeah, let's dive into it.
Hey, good morning, David. How are you doing today?
Good, John. How's it going with you?
Oh, I am good. Just enjoying the morning. My time, I'm guessing it's your early afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, or
Yes. Yeah, mid-afternoon. So quite pleasant. Been
yeah,
a nice sunny day here, so got a lot done this morning. So
awesome.
perfect.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time to, talk to myself and my students about all the different places that you've worked at and lived at over, your career.
Yeah,
Um, I guess to start, I was going to see if you could tell us, who you are, where you've lived and worked, and
certainly.
what you do.
Yeah, certainly. Well, my name's David Gill. I'm originally from Cornwall in the UK, which is right down in the far southwest. So surfing, beaches, moorlands. So a beautiful part of the world. But I spent the last 23 odd years sort of traveling and working across the world, basically. So started off leading expeditions, worked for Outward Bound many years ago, worked for international NGOs clearing landmines. So got to see some interesting places, some areas that most people won't get the opportunity to go and visit. Worked with some incredible people, and yeah, had some fantastic experiences and learned a lot about different countries, different people, and a lot about myself as well. So it's been quite a journey so far. Yeah, and now when I'm not in the UK, live in New York. So we've gone from conflict zones to the Big Apple. So it's a different pace of life, different
Yeah.
pace of life there. So yeah, it's been. So I started off after university. I always had a goal of wanting to work overseas, and my initial goal was to join the British Army. So I got selected for Sandhurst. Didn't complete my training because of a knee injury. So I was a little bit gutted, but my career plan was always to have my own adventure travel company. So I wanted to build up the credibility to turn around to students like yours and parents of high school students and say, look, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, got the scars so your children don't have to. And so I started, say, with Outward Bound Wales as a climbing instructor, kayaking, team building, all that side of things. And then took my first expedition to South America. This is 2003. So worked with graduate students, fresh out of either finishing their degrees or their masters, and we took them for it was almost 6 months across Ecuador, Peru, Chile, and Bolivia. So that was my first real sort of management of a big trip. 20 odd clients, couldn't speak a word of Spanish, and basically given an itinerary and a wad of cash and a credit card and said, bring them home safe. So 6 months through all those countries, all different environments, doing different projects. So we worked in Quito and then traveled language schools, learned how to salsa. So it was a great job, absolutely fantastic job. Promptly came back from there and then got myself another expedition to Malawi. So got to go to Africa for the first time. And that was absolutely amazing. And I knew sort of when I got to Malawi that Africa is where I wanted to live and work. So managed to wangle my way into different positions, different jobs, and ended up spending nearly 5 years living over in different parts of Africa, doing different roles. So absolutely incredible. After I think the third expedition was to Belize with a British was basically non-profit mapping Mayan ruins. So Indiana Jones style. Again, we had 25 students straight out of high school, and we're teaching them sort of like leadership, jungle training, the whole sort of shebang. So we mapped, I think it was about a 2 square kilometer area of the Belizean jungle, uh, finding Mayan ruins, aqueducts, the whole work. So absolutely incredible experience. getting to learn how to deal with limited communications, limited rations, or non-varied rations. So it was very sort of challenging environment, and obviously dealing with all the delights of living and working in the jungle. So everything from health matters through to psychological sort of living under the canopy for such a long time, and just knowing each day you're going to get into a wet kit, change out of your dry kit at night into wet kit, and then spend 8 hours hacking through the jungle. So that was a good sort of experience on how to deal with varied individuals, all British kids. So there was no sort of real cultural problems there. Everybody had the same sense of humor, the same expectations, but it was managing all the different tasks and keep them motivated for 3 months solid in the jungles. Then I decided that expeditions, although great fun, good experience, was not the most high-paying job. So I thought I'd try and earn some money. And so I ended up working or applying for the Halo Trust, which is stands for the Hazardous Area Life Support Organization. So it's a British NGO that was set up in 1988 in Afghanistan to remove landmines for refugees returning from Pakistan and making sure the aid convoys could get through without blowing up. So I joined them, and after quite a grueling interview, it's all run by, or at the time it was run by ex-British military officers. So I had a hard time for trying to explain why I didn't commission, why I dropped out of Sandhurst to all these guys. Yeah. And somehow got through that interview. It said, your background's HR. I'm sure the questions that I was asked are probably not legal, probably not entirely appropriate, but they were looking for individuals who were able just to go out into the middle of nowhere, work with limited resources, get on well with the host nation, our deminers, and all the bureaucracy and politics that come with it, as well as learning how to blow stuff up, which that was the interesting side of the job. So I got posted to, my training was in Nagorno-Karabakh, which is an ethnic region of Armenia. So I spent from 6 months learning the tricks of the trade, getting down on my hands and knees, going into minefields, clearing landmines, learning how to deal with all sorts of unexploded ordnance, bulk demolitions, airdrop bombs, all the nice things that I signed up for. But I thought, oh, this is going to be great. It was only also part of a big we had a whole sort of training on fleet logistics, HR, management, the finances, dealing with donors. So all of the stuff that keeps the projects running. And so it's quite comprehensive, a lot of things to get your head around. Suddenly you're dealing with different governments, allocating different pots of money to different sections of different companies of deminers, and learning how to plan and forecast a year-long operation. So that was fun. Got out of my training and then was sent to another country that doesn't exist called Abkhazia, which is at the western tip of Georgia, right on the Black Sea. And my first sort of posting was to a region called Gali, where I was basically left in charge of up to 45 deminers, a location, 20 odd vehicles in at the time, a pretty war-torn town. So a lot of bombed out buildings, a lot of issues with different ethnicities still not getting on well after the wars ended. Russian peacekeepers, UN presence, and limited capability to actually donor money, because it was not a fashionable country. It's not your Cambodias or Sri Lanka or Afghanistan. So we're eking out every single dollar. So from a managerial prospect, looking at it, it was great. Learning to get more out of dollar than you thought you could. Learning how to be resourceful. It was absolutely fantastic sort of posting. Halo then decided that I was suitable enough to be let loose on a bigger project. So it was back off to Africa, to Mozambique. So the challenges and differences in sort of culture. I'd gone from a country that speaks Georgian, Russian, broken English, so I picked up some Russian, enough to get by, to Mozambique, where they speak Portuguese, and up in the area I was on the Tanzania border. So the Rio Ruvuma runs all the way down to the Indian Ocean. One side of the river is Tanzania, the other side is Mozambique. So Swahili comes into play, Makonde, Makua, the Shosha languages, all of the different languages from different groups, all working together, and it blew my mind. I'm sat there with my accountant or finance guy could speak English, so I was having to work through Marcelino for the first few months, and a Lonely Planet phrase book for Portuguese. So I'm sat there on a minefield trying to find the right words to describe things, but aren't in that phrase book. So lots of challenges there. Supply chains, the whole works. My location, I had 250 guys. So I'd gone from managing 45 guys up to 250, and a $3 million budget, which at about the age, was I about 26, 27 years of age? It was quite a lot of weight on your shoulders. And knowing the minefields we're dealing with up there were laid by the Portuguese back in the 60s, late 60s and early 70s. So it was historic ones, but they ran for 52 kilometers. So instead of dealing with 1 or 2 landmines a day, we're pulling out about 100 to 150 landmines a day, which when you're managing, we had, 4 teams out, each with 3 sections. It's a lot of men on the ground, a lot of opportunities for things to go wrong. And a bad day in our office was a really bad day, and would involve, we obviously had strict CASEVAC policies, strict standard operating procedures, but everybody's human. Accidents do happen. Nature can kick in. So as I say, managing up there was pretty hectic. So language barriers was the first one to overcome. The cultural barriers. It was, for me, a totally different world. I spent, on average, about 6 to 7 months living in the field with the guys. So once in a while, I'd come down, grab a hot shower, get some food, be able to. This is mid 2000s. So even then, our technology is still not great. We're having set up BGAN satellite communications. So nowadays, you can, anything you want, any communication. Say you're sat in Tennessee and I'm here in Cornwall, as if we're in the same room. Back then, I'd get once a month. I'd get my basically my orders for a month and my budget for a month, and that was it. I was left alone, which was brilliant. A lot of autonomy, but a very structured managerial sort of hierarchy, which for the role of the job was necessary. There's no mucking around. We couldn't deviate. Personal feelings didn't come into things. It was just get the job done. And say that it does, looking back at it, since I've left Halo, the organization has changed completely. There is an HR department. There are things put in place for when you need time off. It's recognized. Back then, and being British, it was crack on, stiff upper lip. So I must admit, it was changes that I think were necessary for the organization and for the people working for it. Unfortunately, I decided to leave Halo. I had these grand ambitions to set up my own expedition company, as I said at the beginning. So I'm there going, right, I've ticked off the boxes, multiple expeditions, international sort of managerial experience, risk management. And then I just thought, right, what's next? I won. My gambit was I wanted a posting to Afghanistan. It's like, you send me to Afghanistan, everything will be good. I don't really need a pay rise. I'm quite happy on. The pay was shocking as well. So if anybody's expecting to get into working for international development, be prepared to not be paid a fortune to do very hard, interesting work. So yeah, I said Afghanistan. They turned around and said Somalia, and I went, I need out of Africa. I needed a break from after 2.5 years of being in Mozambique. I needed to change the scene for my own sort of sanity. And I thought Afghanistan was going to give me that sanity. And so instead, I resigned, and I then signed up with an American company, a consulting company, again in the realms of landmine clearance and dealing with IEDs and EOD sort of work. So this is 2008, 2009, right in the middle of the war going on, and the company I was working for, we were contracted to NATO. We contracted to the US Army Corps of Engineers. So a complete change from humanitarian work to project-driven. We have to make a profit. War is good money. And so the managerial style changed, rather than being more sort of understanding of the D-miners. It was more of, we've got to get this task done, completed by this day or before. So it was more of very much a task-driven environment. So again, I had multicultural teams. I had Bosnians working with me, Zimbabweans and Afghans, and myself. And our sort of management structure was all run from DC. So everything was kind of very, very much different. So I spent nearly a year out there working on various tasks in around Bagram, and then down to the south into Kandahar, and then up to the northern borders of Afghanistan, which personally is beautiful country, absolutely stunning. The mountain ranges, the food, the culture. I like to collect carpets and rugs. So everywhere I've been posted, I've come home with beautiful rugs and carpets. So one underneath me at the moment is from the 1930s, 1940s that I picked up in Armenia. So Afghanistan for me, it was a complete eye-opener. It kind of scratched the itch of not commissioning with the army. I ticked off all of these boxes. And the seasons dictate the work environment. So again, differences between the countries, everything comes down to seasonal sort of aspects. And again, sort of like with outdoor pursuits. During the summer, you can whitewater rafting. In the winter, ski or climb. There's all those kind of different things. And say Afghanistan, when it got too cold and the ground too hard, there was different postings. So again, I was off in Libya, and this was before the Libyan sort of Arab uprising. And I just went, no, I'm kind of good. I think I'll take a break now for a few months. And so came home for a little while, and then ended up in Angola, working again with a mineral company. So this was more sort of project management, so dealing with government agencies, the whole shebang. So very interesting sort of 6 months there. But yeah, differences in workplace cultures. It's light and day between doing, say, non-profit work through to commercial work, through to then doing what I've done afterwards, which is setting up my own businesses and running different aspects of that. So it's all about different challenges. Just getting to know your staff is a huge one. Getting to know people, because at the end of the day, you can't get your jobs done or your tasks done without that culture. So it's very much, for me, it's been leading from the front, learning by mistakes. But I'm always one to get my hands dirty, get stuck in. So if I can't ask anybody to do something I wasn't prepared to do in this line of work. So yeah, it's different. It's a very different beast, really.
Yeah, so I know. Um, I mean, that's a lot of different places you've worked at, and I'm trying to keep track of it all in my head.
Yeah.
I think, if, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know, I think you spent most time probably at Mozambique,
Yes.
and then you've also spent quite a bit of time in the Caucasus region, which is Afghanistan, Armenia, Georgia. Is that kind of
Yes.
right? Or
Yeah.
okay,
It's a workplace wise, culture wise, very crumbs. Yeah. Afghanistan, very much a male dominated workplace at the
mm,
time. And again, that comes down to cultural reasons and religious reasons. And it's that has within the world of demining, that has changed quite significantly. Halo sort of pioneered work in Angola with all female teams,
okay,
whereby it's opening up opportunities for women to work in the minefields and to earn some money for their families, to support their families. It's incredible. There's no reason why it should be sort of just a male dominated environment. It's a very it's been described as gardening with explosives. So it's a
yeah,
little, it's a very, demining itself is a very monotonous job. It's the same thing day in, day out. You're doing 7 hour shifts on your hands and knees, progressing forwards by 15 centimeters at a time, kind of thing. Um, but the opportunities there to then get into surveying side of things, to get into the team leading side of things, with logistics, finance, it's such a varied amount of roles that you've got to carry into this. So it's, for me, absolutely a fantastic opportunity. As I said, it doesn't beat sort of being in your 20s and seeing the world, getting paid reasonably well, and doing some good for it. So it ticked a lot of boxes. And if I'm honest, it's still the best job I've had in my life. And I was doing that in my mid-20s. I'm now turning 46 this year. And I haven't found anything to replicate that feeling of a good job well done.
yeah,
So it's, I'd definitely say for your students, get involved with some sort of international aid work, or look at that availability of volunteering and just getting your foot in. Everybody's got to start at the bottom and work your way up. And we were having guys come out with vast experience from the military, but they still started at the bottom as a deminer and worked way up. So it's a very humbling and equalizing line of work, really.
yeah. Um, yeah. No, I mean that's a lot of information in a
Yeah, sorry.
kind of a great story, and kind of like some recommendations. Now, I guess kind of looking specifically at culture,
Yeah.
right, in the workplace, in Afghanistan and the Caucasus region, because I know that even includes part of southern Russia as well. And
Yes.
yeah, what, I mean, I can assume that the culture there is a lot different than what you experience in the UK, or even now in the United States with living in New York. You mentioned that it's a very like male dominated culture.
Yes.
It has a huge religious influence. I mean, do you have any, interesting stories where you thought one thing and then like the culture, you were like, oh, I messed up, right? Like with this culture. Um,
Yes.
Anything that you could share specifically kind of with the Caucasus region? You know,
Yes. Crumbs. Yeah. The Caucasus. Yeah, Abkhazia especially. The hospitality. Everybody is so welcoming, and even if it's a work meeting, or we're out surveying a minefield or a suspected minefield, and we're chatting with the local farmers, and sort of the culture is very welcoming to guests, and everything starts with shots of vodka or wine, and then it turns into a full meal. So I'm there very hasty, trying to get on with just finding out where these minefields possibly could be. Next thing we know, hours have disappeared as we're sitting there having to do all the formalities of
yeah,
not just demanding or getting information straight out. We had to break bread. We had to go through the history of things. And that was a good eye opener for me because, as I said, from the UK and especially now working in the US, everything is now, now, now. That was a case of having to sit back down, listen, and then learn and just observe. And then slowly you got trickle fed information. And the more that the people in these areas sort of warmed up to us, obviously after periods of war, there's a lot of suspicion. There's a lot of who are you kind of thing turning up.
Yeah.
We've been accused of spying as we're trying to find out this information. So there's this hesitancy. So it taught me to slow down and appreciate things a lot more. And recently, say, working in New York, been working for, coincidentally, the guy I worked with in the Caucasus region, my boss there is also in the States. So I was running a logistics company for him, for a multinational company that likes to deliver smiles. So we're working for Amazon.
Yeah.
And their culture very different to anything I've experienced, where it's just now, 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 the demand is there. And it gets results. But referring back to sort of like the culture of Abkhazia, Afghanistan, and even Mozambique, where it was, we were trying to find the bigger picture. We were trying to find the right way of doing things, the right information. So we're actually focusing on areas that actually had landmines rather than clearing areas that would turn out to be great farmland, but never possessed anything. So it was a case of sitting down and analyzing things and crunching things. And it was more human sort of relations and building that rapport, which I still think is absolutely necessary in any sort of job and any sort of environment. But that especially sort of stuck with me, the whole sitting down. And then I've left minefields or minefield surveys drunk, but I've got the map, I've got the information that was needed, but tipsy. And it's, say, Afghanistan was the same, but without the vodka. So that was a lot of tea drinking. It was the same sort of process. So it was that same mentality. And at Mozambique, it was Swahili, I think it is poli. So slowly. So it's little things like that. I've come to realize that the more you kind of stress over things, the harder it gets for yourself. As they sweat the big things, not the small things. So it's that whole getting, even moving to the US as a Brit, the cultural differences, the slight differences in language, the slight differences in humor, all of those things are apparent. And we across the pond, we both speak the same language, but I'm still a British guy working and living in America. My family, half my family's over there, so it's just like, but I'm still on that edge of things. It's still not home, so to me, it feels like still another deployment, which a psychologist would have a field day with that analogy. But it's it is getting to know again different ways of dealing things. And so I'm working in the Bronx. So I've got to remember my Spanish. I've got to work with Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, and it's a whole different ball game of learning different cultures, but also applying the same structures. Everything doesn't really change. It's just the way people are different, slightly different, and learning the best ways of managing people. So it's quite a skill, and I still haven't mastered it fully.
Yeah, I think we're always learning, right?
Yeah.
So.
Definitely. It's every day's a school day.
Yeah, and then since you also spent quite a bit of time in Mozambique, do you have any, I guess, similar cultural stories where you thought something was going a certain way in Mozambique, and then you were like, "Oh, I'm doing this wrong, right?" Or maybe I should adjust to the culture there.
Yes, yeah. So again, I was in a very rural area, and I had basically just a massive learning curve. With so said earlier, we had 250 staff. A lot of them were from the Macondi Highlands, uplands where we were working, but a number of our teams were coming up from the southern areas. So there was a slight language barrier between even the Mozambicans, so Makua and Macondi, and there'd also be their relationships. A lot of the guys were rural sort of communities compared to town guys. So it's getting them to niche and work in for 6-week deployments into the field. And say language-wise, crumbs, yeah, I ended up, I had one interpreter who was not that brilliant at interpreting. And so I was trying to use him as well as my basic Portuguese to let one of our managers go. We basically were making him redundant. And somehow in translation, it got misinterpreted, and the guy ended up thinking that he was getting a promotion and a pay rise. So that was a complete 180 from what was expected. So it was little issues like that, which reiterated that to me, it was like I had to learn as much of a language as I could to avoid these mistakes. And so it was also we had to deal with a lot of Mozambique's labor laws are very, it was a socialist country, so everything was in favor of the workers rather than the employees. And so we ended up dealing a lot with labor law issues. So I became an expert on the Mozambican labor law. I used to sit there at nights because I had nothing else to do, no Wi-Fi, no TV. And I would sit with a translated version of the labor law and learn it to then use it to not to as an employer's advantage, but to turn around and sort of say, look, this is the job, this is the contract, this is what we've got to do, and this is the word of law. Because we were getting sued left, right, and centre by city lawyers who were taking advantage of our D-minors. And it was like, look, guys, we've got this in place. This is protecting you on this. This is as an employer, etc. And it was fascinating having to learn little things like that. Learning the intricacies. Again, going from province to province and the suspicions there. It was the case, as I said, breaking bread, learning to do things slowly and adopting a mentality that it was to get over my frustrations. It was a massive, very humbling. And I learned a lot from my staff out there. Still in contact with about 4 or 5 of my staff 20 years later. And it's great to sort of see, from our perspective of the job, we had one thing to do, is get rid of a landmine. That's it. These things don't come back. Once we got rid of it, then we could see the benefits of that work. So schools could be built, hospitals, roads, farming, and the country could recover. And that was our single mission. And working with Mozambicans or Afghans, working in their country, it was a privilege for me to be working alongside them to help them get their country fixed again and onto the road to repair. But yeah, there's been so many things lost in translation, a lot of it lessons learnt. I certainly do things differently if I could, but everything's a learning experience. So yeah, you roll with the punches sometimes. It's it's been an interesting sort of experience of that. But yeah, for me, languages and culture is huge. Reading up about as much as I could before I got there. And I learned so much about the Macondi Highlands. It's a very matriarchal society there. So sometimes instead of speaking to the village elders would be all the old ladies. And you'd have meetings with those ladies who are fascinating. Facial scarification, everything like that. And again, it was that hospitality that undermine all the or underlie all of my experiences, and just getting to live and experience things was incredible.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, I have one last question for you. Um, if you had, one piece of advice, right, that you would want to give the students, if they're looking to, work internationally,
Yep.
uh, what advice would you have for them?
Just go for it. You won't regret it. Even if things don't work out, it's a good learning curve. It leads to other things. It expands your sort of mind. It gets you out of your little bubble, and just literally get that passport. Take as little possessions as you can with you, and just come home rich with experiences, friendships, and an interesting resume. So just get that passport and go for it. Don't hesitate. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks for that. So, well, David, thank you so much for your time and, being able to talk to me and my students. It's going to be very interesting for them. I'm sure everyone's going to be sitting there on Google Maps looking up the different countries as you're saying them, just to get a good idea. So, um,
well,
great.
no, I hope they got something out of all my ramblings. So, no, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, John. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you. And have a great rest of the day. Okay.
And you too. Take care. Thanks.
All right. Bye.